Hello and welcome to The Exchange, the program where we invite leaders in their field to exchange their ideas on a topic that's current and relevant to our everyday lives. I'm Rob Buckingham and my co-host on The Exchange is my wife, Christie.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to today's show.
Great.
We're going to be discussing how to raise children that are not biologically your own. Today, family structures look different. There are more blended families. Families are also choosing to foster, and grandparents are helping to raise children. What are the do's and don'ts when raising a child that's not your own?
To discuss this topic, we're joined by Paula Westhead from Stepfamilies Australia. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. We're also delighted to be joined by Anita Pell from Berry Street, an organisation that focuses on helping children to have a good childhood, and part of that is organising foster care. Welcome, Anita.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Looking forward to the discussion, but before we start, let's take a look at this.
A normal family is made up of a mum, dad and a couple of kids. But is that normal? By whose standards? Today, blended families are becoming more and more common. It's not always the child's biological parent looking after them. This could include grandparents and even foster parents. What are the major issues facing people raising children that aren't their own?
It's going to be a really helpful topic today, raising children that aren't your own.
Yes, absolutely. Well, could you tell me what are some of the reasons that people do actually, circumstances surrounding people not raising their own children?
Well, I guess families or couples or individuals who are not able to have their own children, individuals and families who choose to become foster carers, and of course in today's society we have lots of grandparents that are raising their children, their grandchildren, sorry, they're taking on a different role, that of a parent unfortunately rather than a grandparent. And of course so we have so many blended families today.
Absolutely.
Paula, would you add anything to that?
Yes, and I think step families are probably some of those families we see a lot of now. 1 in 3 marriages that are finishing means that a lot of those people are re-partnering and reconnecting. Some of them are remarrying, some of them are just in de facto relationships, but then often having children of their own, along with other children that come into the home, you know, at different times of the week.
Is it something that's more prevalent these days than in days gone by?
Well, yes, it is. It's 1 in 5 children now will be brought up in a step family, so we'll have some experience of someone who's not their primary parent who will be parenting them at some stage of their life.
Yeah, what do you think would be the #1 requirement or thing to look out for, or to think about, if you're going to look after a child that's not your own?
For me, I believe it is acknowledging that the child actually comes with a story of their own. You know, there's a part of their life that has occurred prior to them coming to wherever it is that they're going, whether or not it's with a blended family by step marriage, whether it's in foster care, or whether it's in kinship care, which is what we term when grandparents or other members of the family are raising their children. So it's about acknowledging that they have a story to bring, and it's respecting and honouring that story, because that's really important for the children.
And we would suggest that you connect with the child before you direct the child in what to do, so you have some connection rather than sort of coming in with telling children what they should or shouldn't be doing when they're in your home.
And obviously it's not just direct, children are facing grief. It might not be direct grief because they've lost, like a parent has died, but it's grief because a marriage is not worked, or a relationship has not worked, or what are some of the other circumstances?
Well, I think for where I come from, most of the children and young people that we deal with who are living with families other than their biological family have experienced trauma, and so for them it's they've missed out on trusting people. Their trusting people has been broken by the adults in their life, and so for them it's really difficult for them to learn to trust. So a part of what the carer has to do is to establish that trust and make the connection. Building of the relationship is really, really important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is it possible to love a child that's not your own,
Good question.
like a child that biologically is your own?
Well, one of the messages that we give to step families or for new step parents is that you don't have to love the child right from the beginning, because that may not happen straight away. And this new relationship is born of loss for this child. And that can be quite difficult for them to, they may not be you as the step parent they don't like, but it's what you represent. It's that whole new family. Yeah. So for a parent and for a step parent, that may take some time. So it's important to look for what you like about the child and find things that you can connect on and on what level, and what your role's going to be as a step parent, to be clear about that.
Yeah, sure. Anita, would you add?
And I think for me, both from a professional viewpoint and also my own personal viewpoint, is that we have in our family we have grandchildren that are a result of a blended family, and I've also been a foster carer many years ago when our children were very young, and it's not difficult to love another child. It really isn't. It does take time, like Paula has said, but it's not difficult, you know.
Is it a personal choice for you, though? Did you say, I am going to deliberately try and connect with this child and love this child?
I think in terms of our having grandchildren, absolutely, and also we chose to become foster carers because we knew that that's what would be expected of us. The only way we would do it was if we could treat the children who came into our home exactly the same as we would treat our own. It's that responsibility of being a parent.
And that's a good point. Like, being a foster parent, it's a choice, it's a call, you feel, but a step parent can be, you know, how does that differ in your mind?
Well, I think sometimes for the step parents, they've come together as the relationship as the two adults have come together.
Yeah.
And the children's relationship with one of those parents is actually longer than the relationship. So that can be quite difficult for the new step parent to know that there's a whole history that this child and the other parent have. And sometimes they can be quite jealous about that and find that, you know, the child brings up things that, oh, I always did this with Dad, and things like that. And it can be quite difficult for step parents to feel included in the family sometimes. So we talk about being patient and being respectful, and as Anita says, it can be quite hard, but there's some good positives that can come out of it as well.
Let's focus on the positives. What are some of the really good things, the rewards?
I think for people who haven't been parents before, they suddenly find a new part of their lives that for them can be quite enriching, and they enjoy having, you know, children with a different sense of humour, a different sense of fun and play in the house where they haven't had that before. It can be quite enriching and also joyful, you know, to change what's been just two adults in a home.
Anita?
And I think for us it's around, carers always say that they get a lot more, they believe they get a lot more out of it than perhaps what the children do that come into their home, because they get so much joy out of seeing a child develop and commence their healing process for whatever it is that's gone on prior to them coming into care. And so they get so much enjoyment and so much gratification from that, and that's what keeps them going, because it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. It's tough caring for children that are not your own, because you know, the child might come in with a very different set of guidelines and rules from home and
different values,
standards. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that's being challenged, and you know, the natural children, or the children of carers, or the natural children of one of the couples in a blended family have to manage that. They have to deal with that, and it's not easy, but it can be done. It's about being aware that that's, as an adult, it's our responsibility to manage that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just on, you know, you've got kids from different families and now they're all living under the same roof, and it's not all going to be like the Brady Bunch. What happens when the kids are at loggerheads with each other? What do you do? How do you deal with that?
And how do you not take sides with your own children?
And I think that can be quite difficult, and it's important to learn those skills to stop and think before you react. So try not to be too reactive, and often that's what we do first off. We react because we're not happy about. So it's about taking time and apologising if you make mistakes and saying, you know, I said that too soon, I needed to think about it. And for parents, we need to lead the role of how you want it to work in the family. So modelling that respectful behaviour for everybody is important.
Good.
And the only thing I would add to that is that for us in in what we do is that the training for carers prior to them becoming carers is so important, because it helps them to become more aware that these are the things that are likely to happen, and we want you to think about how you might respond to that rather than react. Because like I said, it's a challenge. Yeah.
We're going to a break in just a moment. Sorry, Paula, you want to say?
I was just going to say the same for step families and for all parents, though. Sometimes we all need some skills or some upskilling on how to work. So it can be true for everyone.
Definitely.
A wonderful discussion. We need to take a break, but we'll be back with more soon, right here on The Exchange. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're having a great discussion with Paula Westhead and Anita Pell on raising children that are not your own.
Absolutely, it's a great discussion. Paula, maybe just tell us, we talk about the parents and how they cope. What about little things to realise when the children are not coping? What are the things to look for?
I think to notice, first of all, if you notice a sudden change in behaviour or something that's quite different. So perhaps your child is sleeping more than they used to sleep, or a bit more angry than they used to be, or perhaps more teary than they were. So anything that's a sudden change in the way they normally behave or present when they're around you. And for step families, that's important that the primary parent or the biological parent is keeping an eye on that to make sure if they're noticing changes in their children. Yeah.
And a certain amount of change would be normal, getting used to something.
It's more if it goes on for a longer period of time, and if you think that they're not enjoying the things they used to enjoy and they seem to have changed, the way that the friends that they mix with, or even just the way they enjoyed simple things in life, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anita, would you add to
that
in any way?
I would. I think exactly what Paula has said is the same in care. Maybe one of the differences is that when children are placed in care, they often blame themselves. They will think it's their fault that this has happened, what it is that they've done wrong, they're a really bad person, and often their emotions will be really challenging. And so and that's one of the difficult things about fostering, I guess, is that we can expect their behaviour to change. If we think ourselves about how it would have felt for us to be uprooted from what we felt was a very normal family, and then placed with strangers that we really didn't know, it would be very difficult. And so our organisation and other organisations who provide foster care provide a lot of support to carers to help them through that, and we certainly provide support to the young people in care as well. But education, schools are a great source for us in terms of letting us know that things aren't going so well, maybe at school or in the playground. Kids will try and please, and so the school might see it before they actually see it in the family.
Yeah, very good. With raising the children that are not your own, what about looking after and considering the needs of your own children before you take on other children as a foster care, or even in a step-parent situation? Like, is there a place where you've really got to bring those children along on that journey, and what if it's something that they really don't want to happen?
I'm really pleased that you asked that question. For us, sons and daughters of carers are really important in terms of, they're fostering as well.
Yes.
They're all of a sudden sharing their parents, they're sharing their toys, they're sharing some of their personal space, and at times that really gets up their nose. It really annoys them. And so we believe that it's important for kids to be able to meet with each other. So sons and daughters of carers having a network group where they can sit down and chat about the things that do annoy them.
That's right.
And the best way to deal with it, because some of their fear is if they talk to their parent about, little Johnny's really annoying me and he's taking up my personal space, they're concerned that their parent might say, okay, we won't do it anymore, because that's not what they want.
No.
They just want to be able to say, this is really annoying.
Yeah.
Much the same as you would do in a family where all the biological children are your own.
Yes.
You have those conflicts, and good, open, honest communication is so important. Well, you've heard from our experts. Let's hear what the people on the streets have to say.
What do you think it would be like raising children that aren't yours?
Very challenging, I think.
I think it would be rather difficult. You would always feel the constraints of not being the parent, so not wanting to overstep the boundaries.
I do. I've got a
14-year-old stepson and a 9-year-old stepdaughter, and it's challenging at times.
Well, I personally worked as a nanny, so I feel like I've kind of done it to a point, although the 24/7 is not quite the same. But I think you kind of fall in love with them anyway.
I imagine it'd be difficult to connect at first, but I mean, people, I suppose it's not a good analogy, but people have pets and they love those, so yeah.
Probably being able to love it like you'd love your own child and having that emotional connection.
I think probably like it wouldn't make that much difference, you know, as long as you could like connect with them and still sort of feel happy and in a good relationship, basically.
That'd be quite challenging, I think.
And what do you think is the one requirement you would need to be able to raise that child?
To be able to be disciplined with them and to see past that position of you're not my parent.
Depends on the circumstances, I guess. Depends on the children too.
Well, sufficient time to spend with them, I suppose. Doesn't matter about money, I suppose, as long as you can love them and care for them and be there for them.
Assuming you're an emotionally stable person, not a psycho, probably being able to have enough food and enough support. Like, you don't have to be rich, but to have a place for the child to stay, to make that safety net and make them feel like they're safe.
I think love and affection.
I think you need to try and basically say to yourself that they are your own DNA. I think if you do that, then you'll basically look at them in the same way as you might look at a child that is part of your own DNA.
So what's the number one requirement that you need?
Love, lots of love. Yeah, and maybe a little bit of old-fashioned discipline and etiquette. Love them.
Patience. Lots of patience.
And you've obviously got it.
Sometimes I wonder.
Joining us now is Street Talk reporter Sandra Cabello. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Christy.
Sandra, great to have you with us. What did you enjoy about that?
I think there was a wide spectrum of opinions, quite frankly, right across the board. And it was nice to hear that all you need is love. However, one of the things that stood out to me was discipline. And I actually was thinking about that in terms of raising a child that's not your own, how you actually go about disciplining a child. And if
that's not your own.
That's not your own.
And the comment about good old-fashioned discipline, what
so
did he mean by that?
What does that look like? So I'd be interested to know whether it's a step-family scenario or a foster care scenario. How do you implement discipline, especially when the child's not your own and you might discipline in a certain way?
Paul?
In step-families, we suggest to parents that the primary parent or the biological parent does most of the discipline initially, but obviously there'll be times when they're not there, so that they sort of make it clear with the children that when I'm not here, you know, my partner, Steve or Mary, whoever it is, will be looking after you, and I expect that you'll be respectful and also do as you're told, and we'll follow the same rules that we always follow when I'm in the home as well. So you try and be clear and communicate that with the children, age appropriately obviously, but yeah, and important to be clear.
Yes.
Yeah. Anita, is it the same for fostering?
A little bit different. I think I want to go back to the beginning where I talked about that the child has come with a story.
Yes.
And so if as a carer, a foster carer, that I'm wanting to discipline a child, I have to keep that in mind, because you know, if I was to you know, to physically discipline a child, which I would never do. But if I was, then what I would have to think about is, what does that mean for that child? Because that child might think, okay, you know, this is going to lead to something else.
Because that's what has led to something else in the past, yeah.
And the other thing that I'd really like to draw a point on is that my own children, if the way that I discipline my own children, they know how I'm going to discipline them. They feel comfortable with that, as comfortable as any kid can when they know they're going to get grounded or whatever the case may be. But they know their position in our family. They know that they're loved. They know that this is going to be constant. When you're disciplining a child that's not your biological child, they don't have that. And so that's the extra trauma that brings on the child. So it's really, really important that our carers do have an understanding and an appreciation of the best way to respond to children.
So they only hear discipline, they don't hear love.
That's right.
As a form of discipline.
That's correct.
So is that where good communication would have to come in?
It is, absolutely.
And even for some children who have been raised, who come into step families, the history might be that one parent always raises their voice and that's quite normal for them. But for this child, that might be a shock. Yes. They've never heard raised voices and they might be quite scared. So it's important that you understand that and tone it down as much as you can. Yeah.
The word connect came up a number of times in Street Talk. And I think that comes back to what you were talking about earlier in the program, connect before you correct.
Yeah, so that you have the opportunity for the child to get to know you, and I think as Anita says, the way you do discipline, you're clear about the rules and what the ground rules are going to be, so it's not unexpected for the child, it's not something new or out of the ordinary. They know that this is how you've said you're going to discipline them if something happens.
Yeah.
And there's just one other thing that I'd like to add too, and I think it's relevant for both of what we've been talking about, and that is consistency. You know, children who are placed in this type of situation have had no control. They've had no control over what's happened. This is something that other people are making decisions about. And so it's really important that we have an understanding that they need consistency in order for them to start to feel safe.
Yeah, great advice.
Absolutely.
Sandra, thanks for popping in.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Wonderful. Back with more of The Exchange in just a moment. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're talking with Stepfamilies Australia's Paula Westhead and Berry Street's Anita Pell about how to raise children that are not your own.
Absolutely. Ladies, tell us in a nutshell, really, what are some of the things you need to look at if you're thinking about fostering and if you're thinking about getting into a blended family? Would you like to start, Anita?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for fostering, it's about somebody who's interested in working as a part of a team, because it is a team approach. Somebody who's really patient, someone who's really prepared to, in some circumstances, it's really important for the carer to work closely with the natural family in order to try and return the child home if things are such that that's the case. So it's about them being flexible, and you know, really just being prepared to be open and provide good parenting to a child.
And I think for parents who are going into new relationships where there are children, for the other partner, to take it slowly, to meet them slowly, to make sure that the relationship's quite stable before you meet the children, then just to take your time, not to rush it, to be patient, and to understand that it may take the children quite a long time to connect with you, but just to keep persevering with that.
So would you even suggest that people, if necessary, slow it down for the sake of the children?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we offer skills training and things for step families as well at Drummond Street Services, so to come and do a group as a couple together to talk about some of those things that might come up once you're living under one roof and that sort of thing.
That's great. Now, Anita, you're always, of course, looking for people to foster care. What sort of people are you looking for to help?
Well, I guess, you can really be, we're a non-discriminatory approach to recruiting. So you can be a single person, you can be a young person, you can be a middle-aged person, you can be a couple with young children, you can be a retired couple, you know, you can belong to Christian groups, a whole range of people we would really welcome to apply to become carers.
Wonderful.
And you know, they go through an assessment process, so it really doesn't, you know, if someone's interested, don't worry about whether you think you may or may not be suitable. We'll sort it out with them.
And there's training involved as well?
There is training involved,
and support.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And we provide 24-hour support to our carers.
Oh, that's fabulous. Wonderful. And what about yourself, Paula? What sort of resources do you offer?
We offer training for step families or those who are thinking of becoming step families as well, and for all families who are going through transition. I think it's important for children, you know, if a parent dies or if things are different in the family, we can all have things that change in families, so it's important to get some help when you need it, really.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, Paula and Anita, thank you so much for joining us on The Exchange.
Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Please go to our website for a fact sheet on this topic, as well as more information about this show, The Exchange. We look forward to seeing you next time.
See you then.